comprehensive as tech ed, but PowerShell.org throws a little thing called PowerShell Summit. We just wrapped it a few weeks ago in Charlotte. Next year, it'll be the first week of April, so we're going to have the dates up soon. We just signed our contract, and it will be in Bellevue, and I guess that means we're on.
We're on. Hi.
So welcome.
Welcome. I'm Jeffrey Snover. I'm a distinguished engineer and lead architect for Windows Server and System Center Data Center products. And joining me,
my name is Don Jones. I'm a curriculum director for Pluralsight. We're an online training company. And I'm also one of the founders, and I'm the CEO of PowerShell.org, which is a website and an organization that tries to collect as much PowerShell resources as we can, help people find those resources, and help people engage both with the team and the rest of the community to do better with Windows PowerShell. How many people have been to PowerShell.org? Awesome. Everyone else is a failure, so you can fix that by going to the website.
And of course, Don is the PowerShell first follower. Let's give it up for the first follower. Those of you at home get to follow the link. All right. So we thought we'd have we're pretty informal here. This is the Unplugged, which means we don't have much of an agenda. And so we thought we'd, kind of talk about some of the cool tricks and tips that we saw from the PowerShell Summit. I was sitting there watching. So the great thing about the PowerShell Summit, held twice a year, once here in the US and once in Europe, and you get like the world's best PowerShell people to get together and just geek out. And it's wonderful. So there I'm sitting there watching some guy do something. Like, wait, what did you do? It's like, oh, so I'm learning stuff.
Yeah.
Just a fantastic environment. So I thought I'd show you some of the things that I learned from the PowerShell Summit. I don't know if you learned anything, but if so, you take over the keyboard, you can show it.
Yeah, sure. I was mainly busy making sure the meals got out on time at the summit, but
the very good ones.
and the food was excellent, by the way.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put that out there.
Especially with the Maidenbauer. That was crazy food.
Oh yeah, we have a great time.
Then we'll talk a little bit about PowerShell version 5, and then a little bit about NanoServer, and we did a whole session about managing NanoServer remotely. For some reason, they let like 200 people in. That was crazy. So we'll show some of that. If you went to that session, you'll see a bit of a repeat. But so a couple things, right to the command line. So one of the great things I saw was this. So somebody went and showed $PSE. Has anybody ever looked at PSISE? Well, in PSISE, there's this thing called zoom option. So here, let's imagine, you're about to start your demo, right? Okay, everybody, can you read that? And of course, the answer is no. And so what you can do is just make sure it's a particular size. In fact, once I checked this room out, that wasn't the right size. It should be 160. And there. Now, by the way, so in the back, can you read that? Yeah, right. So the point is that whenever you want to do a demo, you want to make sure you get the right font for the back of the room. And so there's this thing called PSISE, and you can do that. And so now, if you haven't seen it before, PSISE.
Yeah, and real quick, while he's typing, this is a really, really great way to highlight that every single application that hosts the PowerShell engine is different. $PSISE won't do anything in the console, but it only works in this. So these applications that host the shell can add their own functionality to it. And if you're working on PowerShell scripts, that's an important thing to remember too. When you're troubleshooting or debugging anything, I don't care if it's a script or a domain controller or whatever, the important thing is to always make sure that your tests are apples to apples, right? Well, this illustrates that if you're trying to debug something, the ISE and the console are different. So if something works in the console but doesn't work in the ISE, well, maybe that's just 'cause. So when you start testing, make sure you're testing apples to apples. If something is going to run in the console, test it in the console. Because some things that work great in the ISE don't work in the console. So they're different. Just keep that in mind. It's a great kind of point for that.
Yeah. Now, so if many people have not really explored the great stuff in PowerShell ISE, again, I was kind of surprised by that. It's like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. That's pretty cool. And why is that? And that is because I didn't listen to my own advice. Anyone that's heard me talk has heard me say the key thing to learning PowerShell is to have a sense of adventure and a sense of joy in exploring the system. Now, in the past, the way you do that is you just go splunking around, right? So there's this thing, $PSISE. So by the way, how did you find that? And of course, one of the ways you do that, CLS, is you dir variable, right? And it turns out all the variables are there. Right? And so then you see this thing, $PSISE, and you say, well, what's that thing? It's a root object model root
Thing.
PSISE. And so the typical way you do this is pipe it to get member, right? And start splunking around, right? So you take a look at that, and that's great. Well, and then what the heck was that thing? Options, and you start options, and you splunk around, and you start, just exploring. But anybody heard of this guy, Lee Holmes? Oh, well, those who didn't, you're got to learn Lee Holmes. Lee Holmes has a ton of great stuff out there. He wrote the PowerShell Cookbook, has a ton of articles. He's sort of the security architect for Windows Server. And anyway, so he has written a commandlet or a module called PowerShell Cookbook. And so I downloaded that. I'll show you later how you do that. And he's got this great thing called show object. And show object, $PSISC, then brings it up in a GUI. Control plus to make it bigger.
So he actually does like GUIs.
Oh yeah.
Just to clarify that. Just not on the server.
I just hate them on the server. Passionate hatred for them on the server. And so, sorry. Hate them. Okay, so then the nice thing about this is, so here it shows you select something, it shows you the variable name, what the type is, and then all the details. And so then here you go down to options, right? And you can see something. See all the options, open it up, and oh, look here. Show toolbar, outline. Show toolbar, that's interesting. Let's take a look at this. $sign. And so, so what I did is I highlighted it, Control C. Let's bring up a new window. So I did Control Tab. So notice what happened there was I was in one session, and Lee has not done what I've asked him to do, and to say make show object work in the background. So at this point, show object has this run space it's blocked. I can shut down show ISE and do something, but instead what I do is I create a new run space with Control T. So this is a completely different session.
It's like having two console windows side by side. That's what the square tab is. It's a whole different PowerShell running side by side.
So in show ISE, I did a Control C. Here I do Control V, and I see that it's true. Well, what happens if I say equals 0 or false? And it goes away. Awesome. Set it to. Well,
now you'll never get it back.
5,555, and it comes back. Now notice that's a key number you have to do. That's the number that equates to true. No, in PowerShell, we have this notion of true and false, and lots of things map to true or false. In integers, 0 is false, and everything else is true. So, could have done.
I think you should have run with the 55555.
Yeah.
We could have made a thing out of that.
Or it's GUI, so maybe. Anyway, so there's a lot of great stuff in here, and you just look here. You can change. Oh, look at you can change the font size. I hadn't thought of that one. Done that one? Have you done that one?
This is going to make a great logon script.
Equals. Equals what? 20. No. Okay. So right. Wanted something else. Anyway, so go splunking around in the system. That was a really cool thing. $PSISE, lots of great stuff to go splunk. So if you're not aware, so basically PSISE is the object that allows you to automate all the things in the ISE. Yeah. So lots of people who write add-ons use that.
Yeah, well, and that's a big, anybody ever seen ISE steroids? Yeah, just a few folks. If you haven't, look it up. One of my fellow MVPs, Tobias Weltner in Germany, has put this thing together, and he basically uses all the stuff that PSISE exposes to add a ton of Visual Studio-esque and other functionality to the ISE. It's like a huge add-in toolbox. A lot of folks don't realize how extensible the ISE really is, and he didn't get it because it's well documented. He just basically browsed around and played with it. And sometimes just having the courage to get in there and play with that and accept the fact that you might crash your VM and have to start over as your worst case scenario, you can find a lot of really cool stuff in there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And also, Tobias not just explored the ISE, but explored the language itself. In a previous version of PowerShell, we exposed a parser, And then the release after that, we exposed what's called an AST, or I never can pronounce this correctly. Try it. Abstract Syntax Tree. Oh, I did it. There you go. A little bit awkward, but I got it out there. Okay, so this AST. And basically, the AST is a programmatic description of the language. And having a programmatic description of the language means that you can write a program to program the program, which is called metaprogramming. And Tobias sounds like your head would explode. And the answer is, yeah, your head does explode, but it's incredibly powerful. And so Tobias has used this to great effect. Your head doesn't have to explode. You can benefit because Tobias can handle this complexity. And you just get the benefits. And so there are all sorts of wonderful refactoring tools.
No, continue.
Okay. Don said, oh, I didn't bring my computer. We're going to have to do everything on yours. And I thought, oh, I don't know that that's a good idea.
No.
Okay, so you warned me if something bad is happening. So Tobias has done all these wonderful things like refactoring tools. And he can go and say, he can take all the commands that have aliases, and he'll expand all the aliases. Or he's got something that takes a look at the PowerShell best practices and analyzes your code for the best practices. And if you're not following the best practices, he'll put, what is it, a green squiggle bar underneath it?
Yeah.
And then you select that, and up pops a rule that says, here's the rule that you're violating. Would you like to fix that, or would you like to fix all instances of it? So some truly amazing stuff. So that's ISE steroids. Go take a look. What did you do?
Nothing. It's fine.
No, what?
No, it's good.
Well, after all that, do you want to show him something?
No.
Okay.
No. Bulk commenting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to lick my cookie? Fine. Go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, that's good.
I'm really uncomfortable now.
Awkward.
Why'd you have to use right host?
What?
Oops. Oh, damn it.
What was that?
You used right host. So everyone, oh, it's Alt-Shift.
He's been telling you, right? Right host kills puppies. I'm going to show you it's not true.
Why doesn't it?
Sorry, it's no longer true.
It doesn't Alt-Shift.
What?
Well.
Oh, Lord, what are you doing?
I just work here.
No, that's not how it works. Okay, so let me explain how it works. Young Padawan. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to put the cursor right there, and then we're going to hit the Shift and Alt key, right? And then while those are down, we do down arrow, right? So now it's on the last right. And then we're going to say, where's the Shift, Tab. This is a test. Okay.
Don can type, but
Indeed, I typed it wrong. So let's go fix that. Again, Shift Alt, down, 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 right.
There you go.
Okay. So this is Shift Alt. It's basically block selection. Okay. So what you can then do again, Shift Alt. Let's see. Oh, where'd it go? Shift Alt. Whack, backspace, and this is cool for stuff like, let's just say net stat. I don't know. Is this a good one? Is that going to take forever?
No.
You're wrong. It will.
Well, not forever. Longer than 61 minutes.
Read config. Okay, so let's say you do something like that, and you say clip, and then you say paste, and then you can do things like Shift Alt. Control C, Control N, Control V, bonk. So basically it's sort of block selection, block copy, and block insert. So really cool.
And bonus tip, how many of you knew you could pipe to clip? Yeah, so now a lot of folks know that too.
Oh yeah, you can pipe to clip. Yeah, we probably should turn that off now. Okay. Let's see, so. Oh, there you go. So, yeah, whatever, you saw it. Okay. bulk commenting. Again, so by the way, so the first of that was thanks to, I forgot who showed me that, but thanks to Dave Wyatt, who showed us this trick. Now, I think it was Dave showed a trick that he learned from Ashley, and that is that if you're ever in a demo, so I've done this in fact, you're in a demo like this, and one of the tricks you'll see us do is you come here, let's just go change this to like 16, you put your cursor somewhere on the line and you hit F8, right, and it just runs that. What did you do? What did you do?
I don't think it likes 16.
Oh, it doesn't like
It's got to be ranges of 10.
Okay.
Or increments of 10.
Anyway, you hit that.
So it's run one line at a time.
Yeah. Now, if you're like me and you have sometimes you get a really dark stage, you might hit F5, and F5 says run the entire script. Now, in general, that's the fastest way you can destroy a demo, because often what you've done is like delete this, restart the server, and all that, and you hit F5 and it just runs through all of them and completely screws up the state. That's why you see people come up to the stage early, like getting everything exactly in as it is. So what he did was he said, well, what you do is you always put a break at the beginning of your script. So if you hit F5, okay, yeah, fine, it always just breaks. Yeah, go. Just breaks, breaks. And so it just gets to this and breaks and doesn't screw up the rest of your demo. So another kind of small but very cool trick. Okay, the other thing we saw, and we saw, if anybody saw my nano server session, we saw was Dan was doing a bunch of invoke command $sim session X, get something $sim session X, just using this one parameter over and over and over again with the VM commands.
Do you ever do that? Credential or something like that? You're just constantly plugging that one parameter. You only ever run the command with that one parameter? No? Go raise your hands, damn it. I know it's late. All right.
Yeah.
We will shut the beer off. We will.
You want to show it?
No, go ahead.
Okay.
I'm afraid to touch the damn thing now.
Oh, fine. Okay, so there's something called PS default parameters. Now notice it's null now. So here, I'm going to say invoke command. Okay, so I did invoke command get process minus ID $PID. So that's my $PID is my current process. So I just did an invoke command find me. So then what I'm now going to do is I'm going to say create a connection to my local server.
So that's new session, NSN, new PS session, computer name period means the local computer.
And something's not happy.
I didn't do it.
So what I'm going to do when it comes back is $PS parameter values is a hash table. And this hash table basically takes keys and values. And the keys are in the form of command name, parameter, and then the value is the value. What are you doing? There you go. What? No.
So he's saying, I'm going to add a new default parameter value anytime I run invoke command. Unless I specify something different, I want the session parameter minus the session to be that $S. Now that's not a system-wide change. That's only going to affect that particular session or run space in PowerShell. If you have another window, that has its own universe, and when you close it, it'll go away. But for that session, it makes it permanent. Now if you have a profile script, you can set those things in the profile, and every single time you pop up a new thing, it'll start populating all those default values so that you don't have to manually type them.
So we're not going to show that with remote ink right now. Instead, what I'm going to do is to show it with, here, I'll say get help invoke command. And you see it shows there. Oh, that's great, except, boy, it scrolled past me, right? So, like, where did it go? Oh, and then I got to scroll up, blah, blah, blah. Well, one of the things you can do is you can say, PS $parameter values, get help, show command, show window equals 1.
So that's the minus show window parameter for the get help command. And it's normally it's a switch parameter, right? Either you put show window or you don't, which kind of means it's true false. So what's the number that means false? And what's the number that means true? 55555, exactly. Or 1.
Okay.
We could have gotten a whole book out of that 55555 thing until you gave it away.
Yeah, you like that? So now we'll rerun the command.
And now it defaults to showing in a window.
So concretely, I did not have to type that. We automatically do it. Now, the neat thing about this is that it works with wildcards. I could have said star help show command, or more interestingly, star VM star sim session equals $S, where I do some $S equals new sim session.
And because of the colors, I just want to make sure everybody can see something here. After the orange $ PS default parameter values, can you all see the gray period? That's what's adding the rest of that to the variable. So and it can be hard to miss sometimes, easy to miss sometimes on these projectors, but that's there.
What's there?
The period.
Yeah.
Right, it's just hard to see sometimes.
What period?
That one right there. That one.
Oh, that one, yeah.
Oh, touchscreen.
Yeah, you got it. Yeah, so it's a hash table. So just take a look there. It's a hash table. Yeah, so it's a hash table. And, oh, done, I didn't do that. Okay, so then run this, run that again, show that it's a hash table. Okay, so now our hash table has two things. So what that second item says is any command that has -VM something, if it has a parameter sim session, use the sim session dot, which is, I created a sim session $. So before I did a get VM, and now if I do a get VM, it'll use the sim session. So basically, this works better when you're doing it remotely, but that's what's going on.
And there is no way you can use this to mess with your coworkers.
To what?
To mess with your coworkers.
Yes.
You know, slide into your profile maybe, add a few defaults, mess you up. Just saying.
That's not good. Do not listen to this man. Okay, let's try this. PS edit. C colon VM slash VMs nano. There we go. Let me get one of these credentials here. $sim $nano server equals new sim session minus computer name $cn minus credential administrator.
He went too fast, sorry, I couldn't catch it.
Perfect. What the heck? There we go. So now I can say, what was that? Before I said, oh, I did it here. Okay, now I'm going to replace that sim session with one talking to a nano server. And now when I do that again, I say get VM. Anyway, it should have gone to that sim session. Let's move on, I'm stalled here. Okay, so the next is help files. I want to talk about help.
Yeah.
So originally, the help came with the system, and now the help is all online. One of the reasons for that is, there's two reasons for that. One was we would ship the help, and then you would use the help and you'd say, hey, you missed something, or you mistyped something, and we'd say, oh, thank you very much. Hang in there, 3 years from now, we'll update the help and we'll get that. And we thought sort of maybe that wasn't perhaps the most agile method. And the second thing was that these help files can get large, and often you don't want them on every system. You want them on the systems you need the help, not on every system. So what we did was we made the help downloadable. And so now you can download the help. So here, I'm going to show you that I've got a directory called save help. I'm going to create one. There's nothing in that right now. dir c temp saved help. Nothing there. Now, if you're not familiar with show command allows us to, show command, where's my show command? Show, come here, where'd you go? It hid. Is it hiding? Oh, You're killing me.
Windows, man.
Yeah. Let's try this one. Sure. What? What are you doing?
Get help.
What? What? Save help.
Save help.
Save help. Save help. There it is. Okay, so something about Z order. Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give my destination path. What was it? C : temp / saved.
Saved help.
Help. Help.
Yep.
And I'm going to say module star. Actually, I'm not going to say module star takes everything. I'm going to say Windows error. What the heck are you doing? Windows error reporting. And we're just going to run this. So that's running here. Probably should have done that minus verbose. Okay, so now what I did was I went up to the website, got the latest help for that, and saved it. Here, go away. Here. So that's the help for that. Okay, so now you can then take that, you can put that on a USB key, you know, go into your submarine. You all have submarines, right? Are your submarines connected to the internet? Because mine isn't. Anyway, so I go into my submarine, and I'm able to update my help by saying I'm going to update the help, but instead of going to the internet, now I give it a path. And we'll say, here, it says, oh, it's already installed, so we say minus force, and voila. We now updated the help without access to the internet.
And there's a lot of organizations that really mandate that downloaded files go through some process, right? Some scans, maybe check for viruses. So this is a way of creating kind of a cutout between your systems where you want the help and the intertubes. So you can create kind of a little staging area, do whatever scanning you need. It's also a way, if you've got to have a lot of machines, doing this regularly. I've got a couple of customers I work with that have it in their profiles that they just try and update the help every week or month or something like that. Instead of them all going to the internet, you can pre-stage the stuff locally, and you can carry it around with you, and they can all go to that one place. It's really useful.
So before we get into PowerShell version 5, are there any other tips and techniques that you saw at the summit you want to share? Cool things?
Oh, they're all big stuff. Yeah, anybody play with Pester?
Oh.
We at least have to mention this. So Pester is a PowerShell-based test framework. So let's say you've got a script and it's important because you're running your business with it, or part of your business, or it does something important like delete everything in Active Directory before you get fired, so it's important. Pester is a way for you to kind of define what you expect that thing to do and then test it in a test environment and get a report back on whether or not it did it or not. So it's part of a continuous integration thing so that you can have this sort of automated test component. And several folks have been working on Pester. It's an open source thing. Dave Wyatt, one of the MVP that Jeffrey mentioned earlier, is one of the lead folks on that. And here's the neat thing about Pester and Windows Management Framework 5 and Server vNext. Pester comes with it. Open source software comes with Windows. Next time. Yeah.
Is that crazy? Is that crazy?
Who are you and what have you done with my software vendor?
Yeah, that's crazy stuff. That's the first time we know of that. We're actually taking open source software, because we looked at it and we said, hey, that's great stuff. You know, why would we go replicate that? So we reached out and they was friendly to it. So we took that software and now it's going to ship open source software in Windows Server, first time ever. Amazing stuff. But wait, it gets stranger and more wonderful. So Pester, while it's great, solves a particular set of problems. And we looked at that and said, yeah, that's great, but we need more. We need to extend this. And so we're going to participate. We've already been doing pull requests, so they've been taking some of our changes. We intend to go quite a bit farther because of the needs of our customers. Now, as I looked at this, I said, you know, those guys over there, they have a set of customers that are going to need to do the same thing, that they are going to use Pester, and that's going to be great for their customers, but their customers are going to have the same needs that my customers have. So I thought, well, why don't we work together and jointly take this Pester and extend it so that it meets the needs of our common customers. And so I reached out to VMware.
He's not kidding.
And I said, hey, would you like to work with us? Would you like to join us and jointly take this open source project and advance it for the mutual benefit of our customers? And they said yes. And so today, Microsoft and VMware are working together on an open source project for the benefit of our mutual customers. So cats and dogs living in harmony. It's a beautiful world. This is really not your dad's Microsoft.
Now, to just briefly, because not a lot of you raised your hands, to briefly give you an idea where Pester might fit into your environment, one of the things that PowerShell 5 brings is the ability to download modules from repositories. And that might be an internet repository, or it might be a repository that you've set up on your private network. So imagine the picture is you or the other folks you work with, you code up the module and you're working on a revision. You push it into source control. You guys use source control, right? Oh, you're killing me.
Oh.
So you use source control because sometimes things go wrong and you need to go get your source out of source control. You run pester tests on it, and if the system passes those tests, it goes into the repository. So you code, testing occurs, and you have to spend time developing those tests, obviously, it's a commitment, but once it passes the test, it winds up in the repository so people can pull it. And so one of the things PowerShell.org is going to do with some funding from vendors like VMware, Chef, and Microsoft is we're going to stand up a community continuous integration server where you will be able to submit your modules and have it run your tests, and we'll pay for the processor time so that you can have your modules downloaded. We've not actually told anyone about that until now, but Dave's working on it.
That's amazing. That's cool.
Yeah, because we're awesome.
Yeah, you are.
Yeah. By the way, can I?
They don't use source code control, so we should have calibrated our audience.
Yeah, probably.
So just a few calibration questions. How many of you put your admin passwords on a Post-it note on the front door of the office? That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
By the way, so I did a talk about GIA and security and how important that is, and you should go follow up and read that. But in it, I was trying to make the point that a lot of times people think, oh, to get hacked, it's this ultra sophisticated enemy that comes and gets us. And you might have heard of this recent, I think they said it was ISIS attacked this French media company and shut it down for days and days and days. And people were like, oh my Lord, what does this mean? The enemy has these ultra sophisticated capabilities. They're opening up warfare on this new front. What does it mean to all of us? And when they investigated, they found out that in fact this reporter had been interviewed in his office, and right behind him was this big piece of paper with the admin password on it, like live broadcast to the world. So I just thought I'd point that out.
Fun stories.
Oh yeah.
Good times.
Okay, so let's talk about PowerShell version 5.
Yeah. So anyone played with PowerShell version 5 yet? Okay, look, it's not production yet. Stop installing it on your production servers, all right? But big release. And we'll talk about some specific features, but I think as you look at this, this really shows kind of a life cycle for PowerShell. The early versions of PowerShell, version 1, version 2, version 3, really filled in the day-to-day administrator. It's a good command line, not language, but a good command line experience, remoting so that we could control remote machines, workflow, things that really appealed to all of us, 80% of us. The one area where PowerShell was a little weak was for developers, people who really wanted to build hardened professional code out of PowerShell. Kind of the answer for a long time was, well, go get yourself a copy of Visual Studio and learn C#, which is fine. But PowerShell really had the potential to do a lot more. And so as we talk about a lot of these features, there's a lot there for the day-to-day administrator, but there's a lot that's starting to push the upper envelope of that so that this can really become something for professional code as well. So it's a really neat investment, and it just shows how much PowerShell has become in terms of its importance to the whole Microsoft ecosystem, and then even beyond Microsoft.
Yeah, that's correct. And PowerShell version 5 has an amazing set of features. So one of the most important one is this idea of package management and PowerShell repositories. In fact, this is so important, we're putting together a program so that we can take those specific functions and make them not just available down level to down level operating systems, but also to down level versions of PowerShell so that everybody can.
So you'll be able to use this on older versions of PowerShell as well as older versions of Windows. That's a huge engineering investment.
Isn't that what I said?
Yeah, but it sounds better when I say it.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyway, so let's talk about that. So get command minus module something get. Remember, I'm pretty bad at this stuff. Oh, okay, so PowerShell get is the name of the module, and we have things like find module, get installed module, get PS repository. So get PS repository, get get PS repository. So it shows me now you can have multiple repositories, and right now we have one. It's the PowerShell Gallery that's hosted up on PowerShellGallery.com. And once you establish these, by the way, the reason why I point this out is a lot of you are going to see this and say, I could never do that in my corporation. And the answer is that's right. Some people will be able to do this, but others, what you'll do is you will set up a private enterprise repository. And then someone will go to these public repositories, find the ones that are interesting, go spend some time looking at the code, making sure that you trust that code, and then you will put it in your enterprise repository, and then you will say, everyone use mine, not that. So you'll be able to set up your own repository. It's pretty easy. But once you set up a repository, then you can do things like find module. Now this takes a while and spews a bunch of stuff, so I'm going to say output variable. And what it's doing is it's finding all the modules that everyone has published and made available at this particular repository. There's multiple versions, you get diagnostics, display information. And this is where we've been publishing the PowerShell desired state configuration resource kit. So all the resources are up there. And there it goes. Okay, so then, let's see.
There's one.
Which one? You have one?
Yeah, enhanced HTML2.
What? Really? So we got 165, which one?
Enhanced HTML2, right there.
Well, here, you know what? Let's do this. $M through OGV. Everybody use OGV, outgrid view? And then we'll say minus pass. Everybody use pass through. And then we'll say install module minus verbose. Okay, so what's that going to do? Takes all the modules that I just got, puts them in this. Can read that? No. That's why you have Control plus. Can you find that thing? Well, you can sort if you want, but I can't find it. HTML. Oh, look at that. Don's enhanced HTML. So I can select this, and then when I say OK, it goes through pass through, pipe through install module. I'll say yes. And voila, now I can say get module, enhanced, minus list. And now I have Don's module on my box. Woo, Don box. No, never mind, I lost. It's a Don Star. I told you, I use wildcards for everything. Don Star, code on my machine. Shut up.
I can't help it. It's been a long week.
It's been a very long week. Okay, so these are PowerShell modules, very cool. Now, notice here, where'd it go? Way up at the top.
Something to think about too is, I know a lot of you have produced modules internally, and it's always been a question of how am I supposed to distribute these things, right? Do I put it all on a file share and modify everyone's PS module path so that everyone's copy of PowerShell has to search that whole damn thing every single time? Well, you don't have to now. You can stand up your own private NuGet. You can decide who in your company is going to contribute to that. So the PowerShell Gallery right now is not wide open. You have to apply to be able to submit to it. That'll change over time. It's still kind of in preview. But you can decide how you want to manage your repo, and then everybody in the company can pull from it. So it really gives us a great way to kind of manage this stuff now.
I mentioned to you that the desired state configuration resource is now part of the repository, and you can pull down a module, and that module can have multiple resources. We also have a special accelerator, so you can say find DSC resource, and here what it is the module X administration has these resources in it. Right? So now you see a resource view of things. And so where this might come in better is when you say, I think there's a DSC resource for hotfixes. So you say, find DSC resource, something about hotfix.
Asterisk.
Never mind.
Asterisk? Yeah, it probably has an X. No. We should work on that.
Yeah.
We'll do a little hackathon. We'll make one.
Okay, now this is all layered on a technology that we used to be calling OneGet. We now call the PowerShell Package Manager.
How many of you have heard of OneGet floating around yeah, same thing under the hood, different name now.
Yeah, like if they hadn't called it, asked the lawyers if they could use that name, it'd be called OneGet. But they did. So let's see, get command minus module, PowerShell something, pack something, something. Pack something. There it is. Package management. There we go. Good Lord. Oh, I see. Pack management. There you go. I'm not joking that I'm terrible at this stuff. So, okay, so now we'll say find package. And what this is going to do is it now will find not just the PowerShell stuff, but it finds all sorts of stuff. Find package minus OVP. So it's now going out to a chocolatey repository, you see.
So how many of you have ever used any flavor of Linux or Unix? Right, so they all have package managers, right? Red Hat uses RPM, and a lot of them will use whatever the hell they use. I use Red Hat a lot. So that's Yum, for example, right? Nod your heads like if that makes sense. Well, that's what we finally have.
Yeah.
Yeah, Woo's okay. Woo's good. There's a lot of stuff up there.
There is a lot of stuff. I didn't realize. Yeah, Dart editor, what the heck was that?
This is a public repository, by the way.
Merge. Yeah, that's worth noting. It is a public repository. Wow. I'm saving these all. Strawberry Pearl. Lame front end. Did you write that one?
No.
Look at this.
You know, the NSFW percentage here goes up the longer this goes on.
Wow, that's amazing. Okay,
PS script analyzer, that's good.
Yeah, so I stored that, and I'm going to do the same sort of trick. But now these weren't PowerShell modules; these were packages, and so these packages can be anything, right? Now, I think that there was some stuff around. I mentioned to you that there's in PowerShell we now have an AST. Okay, and so there's some cool utilities around manipulating the AST. That's the abstract syntax tree. It takes a PowerShell script and turns it into a program that you can do something. So I'll say $, was it P? Yeah, $P. $P pipe to OGV minus pass-through pipe to install package now. Okay, and again, one of the great benefits of OGV is the filtering, and there's something about AST. Now let's just sort these. And I heard, yeah, so there's this AST lie thing. Let's get that one. This AST utility. Oh, no, that wasn't the one.
So one thing as you start looking at this, as this rolls into production and whenever that happens, and you start looking at this, managing the packages, the repositories that your users and/or admins are allowed to use is an important task. I mean, that's something that you need to be aware of. There's some great utilities. I mean, people have put packages for WinZip in here and everything else, but in the case of this particular repository, there's no control on who can put stuff in there.
Yeah.
So
well,
arbitrary.
I found the utility they were telling me about. It's this one, ASTLE1.
Astly? I've never messed with that one. What could go wrong? It's your computer, man.
To Don's point, it should have brought up an ASCII text rickroll, which is awesome. Anyway, the point is that at some point you'll see system kernels in there, and
it's done.
Yeah, no, it should have installing it should have just run it. Oh, I think I forgot to delete it. Tell them why it's bad to just install stuff.
Why is it bad to just install stuff downloaded from a public repo on the internet?
Yeah, explain that to them.
So, when mommies and daddies love each other very much.
It's somewhere.
Now,
Anyways,
the one kind of point that I want to make here, though, is once this goes out and it goes live, and it becomes known that PowerShell can download code from the internet, from public repositories, and install it, someone on some news service somewhere is going to get their knickers twisted, and they're going to have a huge report about how this is the new vector for malware into the enterprise. So, of course, is every single web browser and email client on Earth, but that won't go mentioned in the news report. I just want to make sure you know this isn't doing anything fancy. You can go up to the same repo using your web browser, and they've got a great web GUI, and you can click the little link and download the stuff. This isn't changing anything. It's just giving you a way to automate it. Because if you've got an internal repo where you're keeping your management agents and the other utilities that you use on your servers routinely, you can now easily script the process of those being downloaded and installed from your repo as part of a server provisioning or maintenance or whatever. All this gives us is the ability to automate something that was really always accessible, just hard to get to.
Yeah. Now, has anybody ever heard of Mike Rusinovich? Yeah, he wrote this tool. Who?
Mark Rusinovich?
Mike? No, Mike? Well, whatever. He wrote this tool called Sys. Yes, he wrote this tool called sysinternals. And so I looked on the Chocolatey repository, and I saw it there. And so I said, Mick, when did you put your sysinternals tools up on Chocolatey? And he said, oh, well, I didn't. And so here's the thing. If you go try to get Mick's sysinternals tools from Chocolatey, maybe you're going to get his tools, and maybe you're going to get his tools plus a little something. Who knows? Who put that there? You have no idea whatsoever. So indeed, you want to be cautious when you use this stuff. But it's incredibly powerful, and it is the reason why you'll want to set up your own repository and put your trusted components in this. Now, like I say, it's the thing about chainsaws, right? Chainsaws can be used for good or evil. Chainsaw applied to tree, good. Chainsaw applied to Don. Anyway, probably bad. So bad chainsaw. Okay, now, so the package manager, same thing, applied to some general who knows what repository, maybe not the best thing. But you set up your own repository of trusted sources, that's a very good thing. Gives incredible flexibility. And this week, we announced a DSC resource for package management. So as you set up a desired state configuration and you say, I want these machines to all look this way, part of that can be pull these packages out of these repositories and install them on the machine.
This also emphasizes the importance of code signing. And if your company doesn't have a code signing cert internally, and for some reason you're one of the 5 people left who doesn't have your own PKI, get yourself a code signing cert. Because these packages, as they get built and put in, the majority of them that come from trustworthy vendors are already signed. And so you can make sure that the code is the way they intended it to be. And if they're not, then that's something you can take care of so that if even your repository gets compromised for some reason, you'll be able to notice because the signature will be broken, or you'll be able to track down the person who did it.
Okay, so now in PowerShell version 5, as Don mentioned, we want to be more friendly towards developers. And so we've introduced classes. Now, classes are wonderful. They're optional. You don't have to learn them. But a number of us really love the capabilities of classes. Now, there are some language changes when you do things in a class. So let's explore. First, I'll kind of highlight some of the issues that brought us to wanting to develop classes, and then show you how they work. So here, we're going to create a hash table. And it has 3 properties, P1, P2, P3, right? So you say $hash. Okay, that's great. Now also, I say $x equals hash. Now I can say $x1 equals I am a string. Updated, that's great. But now I can say $xp3. Now wait a second, that wasn't one of my properties. I had P1, P2, P3, and now here I'm saying $P3 spelled out. And when I take a look, there it is, a new property. Okay, so hash tables are awesome, but there's no schema validation. You know, if you mistype a property name, guess what? You got a new property because you asked for it, you got it. That's your deal with hash tables, okay? So that's great, but sometimes you want to say, hey, empirical evidence suggests I make mistakes all the time. And so you probably, like me, I want a little bit more comfort. Okay, so now here, we're going to go and say, okay, well, what happens if I've got a property? I create a PS object out of that hash table. So I'll say $X, and now I did it differently. It wasn't a hash table. It's now a PS object, and I use the hash table as a set of properties. So now I do this. Okay, and it still has the same problem. So PS object doesn't help me. So now we're going to go, and we have a class. By the way, can you see this in the back there? Let's make sure. So now we've got a class. Class, you have a keyword, the name of the class, squiggle brackets. You give the type of the parameter, and then $P1, string $P2, datetime $P3. Okay, and then what I'll do here is I'll say $X equals, and I cast my hash table. I cast it to that type, and then I say P1 and then P3, and let's see how it goes this time. Now, in classes, because you're actually generating .NET classes on the fly, the way this works in an interactive script is that we run things and then we clean them up immediately. So as you create that new class, you've got to use it, because when you're done, we throw it away. Now that's fine when you're writing programs, it's not an issue, but for interactive scripts. So what that means, just to be clear, I'll show you what the issue is. So here, I define it, happy days, and then I run it, and it says, should have said, what are you talking about? That's not good. Okay, well anyway, so now, why did it do that? Did we
The ISE will
Angel,
keep it
did
in
we
scope.
change that?
Yeah, the ISE will keep it in scope now.
Perfect. Oh, and did I mention about agile development? That means week by week, we listen to your feedback and respond and forget to tell the distinguished engineer that we made those changes. So he can discover it in front of 5,000 of his best friends. Okay, so, so notice now, so here was the thing. Notice up here, I had P1 equals 1, and then I changed it to a string, okay? So it went from an integer to a string. Here I declared it an integer, and now when I try and set it to be a string, it says, no, can't do that. Then when I try and set a new property, it says, nope, I don't even know what you're talking about, this P3 thing, no such thing. And there it is. And by the way, notice it formats better, right? So you got P1, P2, P3. So you have a stronger set of rules associated with it. Now, the next thing is that we have no dynamic scoping. Dynamic scoping. There's two notions of scoping. Scoping is when you ask for something, you ask for a variable, like where do you find it? And so there's a notion of a scope, the function you're in, or the parent, or its parent, etc. So lexical scoping basically says, look for it where you are. Dynamic scoping says, and if you don't find it, that's it. Lexical scoping, or dynamic scoping says, well, look for it where it is, and if it's not there, look in the parent, and if it's not there, look in the parent, and just keep walking up the stack. Now, it turns out that that's traditional shell semantics, lots of great stuff, drives programmers crazy. So in classes, you don't have dynamic scoping. So let's make sure we get this in focus. So $X equals parent scope, right? So $X, parent scope. Now I'm going to write a function, f, that says $X equals local scope. So I override it, and then I'll say write host, foreground, red, $X.
So to prove that X changes to local scope, it'll print out in red.
Yeah. And then we run it. Okay, so local scope, happy days. Now, let's get rid of this and run it again. And notice now it's going to look for $X, and it's not going to find it. And so it's going to say parent scope. So it looked for $X in the local scope, couldn't find it, so it went to its parent, and it found it in the parent scope and did that. Okay? You don't get to do that with classes. Okay, so with classes, I've got a class C, and here I call a method f on class C, and we're going to do the same thing. X equals local scope, etc. Okay, so, and then we're going to call it. Okay, so it says local scope, happy days. Now notice again, $X in the parent scope says parent scope. So here, we get rid of that. Now notice, bonk, bonk, bonk. Error. Variable is not assigned in the method. Now, actually, look, here, you're seeing an error right there. So as you write the code, it's now telling you about the error, saying, hey, what are you doing, dude? Like, there is no $X. Like, in this scope, you're accessing something that doesn't exist. So the only way you can get that to go away is $X equals something. And then it goes away. And then you get that. So again, nice, better programming semantics allows, basically what we're trying to do, let's be clear. So we're transitioning from, kind of a loose model where, admins get on the command line and do things, and then they get formal and formal and formal. And now we're getting very formal, right? So we're the same tool. You've heard of this thing called DevOps? What we're trying to do is to have a DevOps tool where the same tool can be used by the operators and the developers. Okay, the developers will like these aspects of the tool where it's very formal.
So quick question, and you can be on, you know what, close your eyes for a second. Just turn around. How many of you think you really don't see a need for classes in your life? Go ahead, it's all right, be honest. All right, you can turn back around now. Put your hands down quick. Here's where you might.
Who raised their hand? I want names.
This strictness that classes introduce, first of all, writing a class is not substantially different from writing the same functions you write today. The syntax is only slightly different. But the strictness actually keeps you from making a lot of really common mistakes. And that's one of the reasons why, when this comes out, you might want to think about digging into them. They actually don't add a ton more overhead to your brain, it's just a little bit. And they kind of lock you into a world where your mistakes are obvious as you're making them in the editor, as opposed to much later when you run them. That's really the upside. That's why developers like these things, is because it kind of forces them to be honest. It keeps them on the straight and narrow. So that's a reason to look at this. Don't disregard this as, well, I'm not a high-end developer, so it's not going to have meaning in my life. It will actually save you some trouble if you get into it. So it is worth looking at.
Okay.
It was the guy in the red shirt, by the way.
Oh, I'm getting you. There are a lot of red shirts. Guthrie? Is that you, Guthrie? Okay.
Hey, we've only got a little bit. Do you want to move on to Nano?
No.
Okay.
I got to show them this.
All right.
Because if you've had this, your head will explode, right? So you've seen this, right? Function. You have some function that uses a return statement. So I've got this function, pretty simple thing. What's it do? It returns the value 1. So we're going to define that function, and then we're going to call it. Awesome! Except then you're editing some stuff. Yeah, you're editing, and you do something like GPS star SS, and just kind of utility, doing some stuff. But you're still just returning 1. That function returns 1, right? And then you run F, and you're like, what? My brain hurts. Like, what happens? And the answer is, if you omit something on the command line, out something on the pipeline, it gets returned, even though you use the return statement. I believe that this was a mistake that we made in the language. One of the things that one of the few, I think we've done a pretty good job, but this really was a mistake. We should not have, when you used a return statement, by the way, you don't need a return statement. These are the traditional shell semantics. This is exactly the way a shell works. Always has, always will, right? You define a function like this, and when you run it, everything that gets emitted gets emitted. That's the way a shell works. We tried to be more friendly to developers and allowed them to do a return statement, but we still kept the same shell semantics. So return is really the same as almost like write, output, and then return. Okay, so it's just another thing that writes things to the output. So that hurts people's heads. So now with classes, okay, notice here, we tried to do this, do a return 1, and it does. First off, it doesn't allow me to do that. And the reason why is I did not declare the type. So if I declare the type, integer, now I can, define that. C2, well, let's do it here. C2 colon new. That's how you create a new one, F, and run, and we get 1. Yay! Now, let's do our mistake. Get process star SS. Ugh, horrible. And now, 1, 1, 1.
So within a class, only return returns if you use return. But what if you took the return one out?
Oh, heck, I don't know. Oh, well, look at that. You get a squiggle bracket.
Because you said f returns an integer, and now it's returning a list of processes. And the shell knows that's not right.
Oh, you know what? It's even better. It says, not all code paths return a value from within this.
Because you're not using return keyword.
Exactly. So if you said
That's
return,
nice.
Return. I ain't joking, baby. I don't.
Oh, now it'll take it, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so then there's things like here, we won't go too much farther. Notice the squiggle brackets, because you said you were returning an integer. Oh, C2 is already defined. That's what it's complaining about. C4, C5. Okay. And complains, saying, hey, you got a set, and I can't return it anyway. So Don nailed it. There's a lot more to classes, but you got the big things, right? Return statement acts as a return statement. You have to declare the values. You have to return the thing. Oh, should we do the puppies? Puppies? Okay, so what has Don Jones taught you all?
Right host kills puppies.
Right host kills puppies. Right host no longer kills puppies.
I'll take care of the puppies, don't worry.
What? What about puppies? Okay, so here's the issue. Oh, dot slash. So here's a command that did a bunch of right hosts. Evil, 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 right? Okay, now what I'm going to do is, notice I went and put a commandlet binding there. And because I have that commandlet binding, now what I can do is there's a new thing in PowerShell version 5 called the information channel. And the information channel, information action, information variable, $V. So it does that, but now $V shows that. Okay, so what that is it captured all of the information that goes to right house is now also channeled through this other channel, the information channel. Now, the reason why you really want to do that is stuff like, oh, I don't have it here. But what you can, oh, here it is, write information, and you can give tags, okay? And so now we're going to do that again. Configuration, do. Okay, $V. Now, $V pipe to get member, you notice you have tags. So $V of 0, format list star, minus force. Okay, so each of these verbose records gives you a detail of what happened, where it came from, when it got it, etc. So now as you use right host, it's capturable. You find out where it occurred, so you can go back and beat those people, change that script, but also it's used for logging. So when you use write information, you can now do things like $V dot where dot tags minus contains log high. Voila. So basically it's a way to tag information. So because we love the dogs, the puppies. Let's just.
Nano server. So, well, I don't know. You've already told them everything about Nano server, at least 200 of them, right? How many of you know what Nano server is? Raise your hand. How many of you don't know what Nano server is? Okay, let's talk about that. So, so briefly, you know, Microsoft has been on this journey with Server Core, right? Since 2008, we've been running around with the Server Core, and it started out as a very limited thing, only did, I don't know, 8 or 9 roles, whatever it was. And then we got another release, and there was a bunch more stuff that it could do. And then by the time we got up to Windows Server 2012, Server Core was not only a fully capable server, it was the default installation option. And by the time we're where we are now, Server 2012 R2, Server Core can do anything. You can remove the GUI and add the GUI as necessary. Nano is kind of the next step along that line. Nano Server is even less of a Windows server than before. And this actually does apply to PowerShell. Well, it is. It is less of a server. There's less of it. The point of it was rip out as many moving parts as possible, so as little code as possible to make it a server, because...
Wait, just be clear. That's less as in like when Oprah got skinny less. It's still Oprah.
She lost the weight and found the weight. But
it was still Oprah.
So there's no GUI, and GUI's not an option. In fact, there's no local console. There's no logging on. So just lock your data center, epoxy up the doors. You don't need to go in there because there's no need to even hook a keyboard up to it. You get in remotely. There's minimal amount of code on it, so that means fewer patches, means fewer reboots. Less code running means faster startups. Smaller footprint means smaller VM images, means faster live migrations because there's less code have to migrate back and forth, mean faster deployment of new VMs because there's less code in the base image that has to be deployed. So what's the size on the thing?
The VHD size for full servers like 8 gigabytes. For nano server, 410 megabytes. 20 times smaller.
410 megabytes. And and you know what? The thing is...
Think like a little tiny action figure Oprah. That still has all of her money.
I actually have that 410 number in my head, and every time I go to tell it to someone, I think that can't possibly be right.
Yeah, it's crazy.
So anyway, one of the first things you have to think about when, okay, I can't log on locally, it's really tiny, it has no services by default. I mean, obviously you can install stuff. How do I deploy it? Better yet, once it's deployed, how the hell do I configure its IP address and other stuff? How do I get in? Well, how many of you use PowerShell remoting? It's simply turned on by default, so you can remote into the thing, and you configure it via command line, as we were meant to do all along, really. So
we have arrived.
We have finally gotten back to NetWare. So,
Angel, we really have to have some budget to take
review the MVP
people.
program. So look, and the reason this next point is important is because how many of you just kind of ignored Server Core in its first release because it didn't do too much? Yeah, and I get it. Here's why you don't want to. It's about the journey now, right? We're used to seeing Microsoft release code every 5 or 6 years, and what we get is more or less a full story. That's not the case anymore. We get to see all the interim steps. Nano today, well, when it ships, will be good as a Hyper-V host. It'll be good as a container host. It'll be good for IIS. It'll be a great file server, all right? Just wee amount of code. But those are the roles that at least now we know that it's going to do. It's not going to do everything. So Windows Server Next will still ship with the full server so you can run all your old stuff. But the reason I want you to make sure you're paying attention to Nano now is that's not always going to be its limited set of roles. That's going to evolve over time, just like Server Core evolved over time. And you don't want to be left behind on this. Don't go, well, you know, we're not going to use that even when it's appropriate because we're just comfortable having our graphical user interfaces running on the server. Don't be. Get away from that. Think about the benefit of it.
Yeah,
for example, the magenta bar is the number of patches that full server took. 23 versus the 2 for nano server. Two patches.
Critical patches.
Critical patches. 11 reboots versus 3?
3.
What is that? It's 2460. Divide that. What is that in hours?
What?
It's 2460 setup time. It's a long time.
Long.
Versus 40 seconds to set it up. You know why it's 40 seconds? Because it's 410 megabytes. There's nothing, you know the bit in Windows setup copying files, it's already done. It's already over.
Actually, it's more than that. That's largely true, but we've been doing a lot of work to reduce the reboots and improve the remote manageability. There's a lot more than just small.
This will make your security people happy. 12 ports open by default. Now, you're going to open more as you install services and stuff, obviously, but that's your choice, right? Secure by default. And then finally, a wee tiny VHD size. Better density, less storage impact, better live migrations of VMs.
Oh, and that is a typo. That says 310 megabytes. It's actually 410 megabytes, so that's just a typo. Now, here's the thing I want you to think through. I know that a lot of you at your work will encounter people who will say, well, I don't want to learn PowerShell, or I don't want to do remote GUIs. I don't like those. That's too hard. I don't want to do that. The next time you hear that, I want you to think of this slide. And you look at that person in the face and ask yourself, is that person really worth 20 times increased size? Is that person really worth 4 times the number of reboots and 10 times the number of security patches? Because the answer might be yes.
Probably not. Probably not. So
or
all the things.
Say, by the way, or you might say, as Don points out, these are what we call IT professionals. Professionals. Do you know what the word professional means? That means you pay them money. You pay them money because they're supposed to be professionals that know how to do a job professionally. So in the IT profession, we learn new things, right? If you didn't want to learn new things, you would get into lumber. My best friend, no, my best friend is in lumber. It's a wonderful industry. He's a wonderful guy, but he learned his industry, and there has not been a new tree in quite a long time. So he goes home and he plays with his kids. He spends the weekends with his family. It's a wonderful profession. That is not our profession. We are in the IT pro profession. They pay us to keep up to date and act professionally to manage systems. And so I'm serious. Is this person who is unwilling to learn how to be a profession, to use the best practices, really worth these things? And I'm really serious. I encourage you to ask that question.
So he's not saying you're giving up the graphical user interface. He's saying stop installing it on the server and remote desktoping in. That's cheating. All you can still have your GUI management tools. You just run them on your client machine with its accelerated graphics card and everything else. And Nano Server, you know there's a certain number of GUI things on a server that only exist on the server, right? Task Manager, yeah? Device Manager. Not stuff you get into every single day, but when you need to, that's kind of the only way to get some of that data. So Nano Server will expose a web-based UI that it can serve from its own IIS-ness that you can consume in your remote browser. So the GUI is still remote, but you'll be able to get into all those things. And if you hop up on PowerShellSummit.org, I haven't uploaded that video, by the way. I was really worried about getting me in trouble. At PowerShell Summit, Jeffrey did a great talk about Nano Server, and we recorded it. So when I get home next week, I'm going to post that. And it's got a video demo of that web UI, and it's not only slick, it includes an HTML PowerShell console on the remote server. So yes.
No, actually, that's not. What you see is, it's part of the Azure portal.
Yeah.
The Azure portal does not run on Nano Server, so it's the Azure, the new web GUI in the Azure portal, so not on Nano Server yet.
We've got like 2 minutes. You got like one more thing to say.
Love.
So look, here's the deal. There's a lot of stuff coming in PowerShell 5. There's obviously a lot of exciting things happening about Windows Server itself. And as you saw some tips and tricks at the beginning, there's even a lot of amazing stuff happening in PowerShell today. There's probably a lot more going on in PowerShell than you realize. So this is going to be a huge part of your career if you're going to remain in this space. And if you're going to move into lumber, then just don't worry about it. But if you're going to stay in this space, this is a huge thing. So make sure you're engaging. You know, if you're not a Twitter person, maybe it's time to find a couple people in the Twitterverse that you like for that. He's at jsnover, I'm at Concentrated Don. If you're another social network, if you're a blog reader, whatever it is, make sure you're reading up on this stuff. There's people writing about it and people talking about it. You're going to have to find them. You want to keep up. It's all changing way too fast for you to not be on top of it pretty much on a daily basis. So, I mean, take this as an opportunity to go home and say, you know what, I'm really going to make this a huge part of my career, and I'm going to have my little list of things I check in the mornings. Really stay engaged.
Yeah, and share stuff, right? So as you share stuff, it's great because then all of a sudden, you know, people use your stuff and they owe you a debt of gratitude. And when you go to the PowerShell Summit, people are like, oh yeah, I used your code. Let me buy you a beer. You know, it's wonderful. It's a great way to get free beer. I mean, that's the end. That's what it's all about.
And if you don't have a blog and you want to blog about PowerShell on PowerShell.org, email webmaster@powershell.org. Anybody can do that. Just say, hey, I want to blog. And if you're thinking to yourself, I've got nothing to blog about, you're wrong. You had to learn something, and the process you went through to learn it will help someone else. There are people who know less than you because there's this thing called a birth rate. So there's always new people, and they need your perspective, because if we take someone who's been in it for 10 years, they forgot what it was like to be at the beginning. So capture whatever you're doing right now for posterity. Blog it on your own blog, blog it on PowerShell.org, do it wherever you need to. What's that?
They're giving us the hook in 10. Thank you very much. This has been great.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.